Welcome to the Orykl Podcast, where we ask the big question, hey universe, what's going on? I'm your host, Huenu Solsona, and today we are exploring another fascinating spiritual journey. Let's get started. Okay, hello, welcome everybody, and welcome to the Orykl Podcast. Hey universe, what is going on? Today, I'm so happy to have Ingrid Honkala join us, who is an amazing human being. We've been chatting lately, just now, and her story is pretty amazing because she's had 3 near-death experiences, as if one wasn't enough. So I'm so happy to have you, Ingrid. Welcome to the show.
Bueno, thank you so much for having me here. It's such an honor and a pleasure to share with you and all your audience. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for making time. So I know you've told this story a few times, so I'm going to kind of give the floor to you, and maybe you can tell us about the first experience that you had. I know you were very young at the time, so we'd love to hear, what happened, how did this all unfold?
Yes. Wow, that was just an incredible experience because that one from that short age, close to 3 years old, already opened the path for me to start discovering who I truly am. It was the door for me to start the path of remembering, let's call it like that, rediscovering my true nature. So what happened is that I was born in Bogota, Colombia, grew up with my parents, my sisters, and they would leave us at the care of a maid. And this lady really didn't pay attention to us when my parents were not around. So what happened in my first near-death experience, I drowned. This lady was doing her own thing, and then my oldest sister and I decided, let's go play in the patio. The patio had a big tank to collect water for hand washing clothes. Back then, we didn't have a washing machine, so we saw the tank and decided, let's play cash across the tank. We climbed the walls of the tank and was thinking about any danger. Let's just have fun. And my sister, she grabbed the ball. We were actually leaning pretty precariously in this tank. The walls were pretty tall. And then my sister threw the ball, didn't apply enough force, and the ball was floating in the tank. I leaned forward thinking I could grab it. And when I touched the ball, it rolled in the surface of the water and I fell in the tank. The first feeling when it was the feeling of this water being frigid cold. I was born in Bogota, as I said, high up in the Andes. The temperature is pretty cold, especially early in the morning. So the temperature in this water was probably 3 or 4 degrees Celsius. So imagine that, the first feeling that this cold pretty much like shocked me already and took my breath away. And I have never been in a pool. I had never been, we didn't have a bathtub. So my head never had been underwater. I didn't know that if you fall in the water, you drown.
Right.
So imagine now I'm being shocked by the call, and now is the terror of why I cannot breathe. Imagine the survival feeling of getting out of this tank and catching some air, and I realized there's nothing I can do, and I am in this horror. And at that moment, it's just when the incredible thing happened. And is that in just a blink like that, I went from a state of complete terror to one of absolute peace. It was the sense, I didn't know what happened, but it was the sense of like, now I don't need to breathe. I don't need to get out of this tank. I don't need to go anywhere. The fear was gone. The sense of peace, calmness, just absolute well-being was there. And People ask me, how can you remember this if you were so young? I mean, come on, Ingrid, you were close to 3 years old. That's almost unbelievable. And I said, no. What I think that really make this experience so vivid in my mind is that there was a lot of what I call contrast. What is this contrast? First, imagine the terror, going from a state of complete terror to a state of absolute well-being. That's already in itself trauma, complete peace, is this shock. Then the next thing, this tank was very dark. So the whole area, when I fell in this tank, it had a roof, it was made of cement, it was very early in the morning. The last thing I saw when with my eyes open was darkness, the darkness of a space. And when I was in that absolute fear, there was just darkness. When I entered into the state of peace and joy and tranquility and spaciousness, it was like, ah. The first thing I saw was light. And then it was like if a light of a candle had been lit, and now that light, it was soft, but it could illuminate my whole watery surroundings. So imagine the sense of like, oh, now there is light. The other thing is that I live in a very noisy house with my sisters. We had dogs, birds, cousins. It was noisy. And the last thing I heard was my heart beating very loud. Imagine when you're in terror and my heart, and I could hear it in my head, like boom, 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 boom. It went quiet. The noise ended. So imagine when I tell you that I am experiencing peace, is that peace beyond, we could feel peace beyond understanding, is the peace that comes with silence. And I call it the silence behind the silence. And I craved that silence so much for the rest of my life that later I would hide into chapels, closets, wherever I was, because I wanted that silence back. And then now I am like in that incredible state of being when suddenly I started to see bubbles. And the bubbles were like surrounded by light. And then I looked at these bubbles and imagine with that, the spirit at the moment of a child, and I'm like, oh, bubbles. And then I started to chase the bubbles. And when I turned around chasing the bubbles, I saw a body. And then I had the realization that is my body. Oh, wow. It was very clear to me. And the body had the eyes open. And this is the other thing. The feeling was familiar, but at the same time is kind of observing that the body was like a shell. Like, oh, that's just the shell. Right. And then again, it was the sense of like, oh, this already had happened before. It was familiarity with this moment. And then after that, it comes the other contrast I like to mention, and is that I was born as a very sick child. And sometimes we wonder why a child will be born so sick, this and that. In my case, in my experience, was to offer me that possibility to see the difference. If I would have born as a very healthy, in good states, and maybe this experience happens, and because it's good and it's a continuation of that goodness, I forget it. There's not really the shocking part of that that brings you to remember something. In my case, imagine when for almost 3 years, I didn't even know what was to feel well. I was always sick. Now, a state of absolute well-being.
Yeah. Why were you sick as a kid? What did you have as a kid?
I was born with respiratory problems. So I have bronchitis, asthma. It was very hard to breathe, always sick. So it was, it aggravated other parts of my body. It was later I learned allergies, all kind of stuff, but my poor system was always unwell.
Yeah.
And at that moment that I am in this state of complete well-being, imagine what happened. I looked at that body and I'm like, I'm not going back there. And I turned around and I left the body behind. And it was that sense like, no, I'm not going to go into this body, forget it. And then when I turned around, I started to see flowers. And these flowers were blooming from nowhere. And then it was like I was picked by even like that sense of, imagine dimension disappeared because now I'm being picked by flowers. And then I said, it's like going back to the womb, where you don't have to do anything. You're just being done, you're just being carried. And I'm like, wow, this is so good. When in a blink like that, when I appear in the maid's room, and I'm looking at her from above, like I'm floating in the room, and I'm like, oh, that's Maria. And Maria was completely unaware of anything, and she was listening to soap operas in the radio, and she didn't realize anything. So since nothing happened there, in another flash just like that, I appear in my mom's path. And I think that when we talk in terms of validating experience, this is what validates this experience, especially in the eyes of the people that think like, oh, I mean, like, come on, is this true? Is this story real? I'm going to show you how amazing this was, that one, we're validating the story, and two, we're proving, and I think I'm the living proof, that the communication between the spirit realm and the physical realm is real. Because when I am in the spirit and I looked at my mom, I said, oh, that's mom? When my mom stopped, she did not give another step. She did not hesitate. And to make this even more strong, if people are in disbelief, my mom had gotten a new job. And what would be the urge of our being? I have to go to my new job. That's more important than anything. No. The call was so intense that my mom stopped, and she knew that something was happening at home with one of her babies, with one of her girls. And my mom, what I have to say, two things. My mom had a great intuition, but the second thing and most important, my mom listened to that intuition.
Yeah.
So my mom turned around and started to run back home.
Wow.
And her bus stop, she didn't have a car. Her bus stop was about 10 minutes away from the house. She was about to arrive, and she started to run. And she's running so fast. And I looked at her and I'm like, I wonder why she's running. And then at that moment, I'm looking at her. So I changed my view and I see a dog at the end of the street. And then, because I adore animals, the moment I feel desire to be with the dog, I am with the dog. And I'm like, whoa. And then I change again my point of view, and I see a park. And the moment I feel the desire of being in the park, I am in the park. Now imagine, this is so much fun. I'm like, I can be anywhere, anytime. Wow. So this whole notion that we have of time and space completely changed. And then I'm playing this game of going places. And while playing the game, again, like suddenly in just another flash like that, I appear in a realm. And this realm was made of pure, intense, shiny light. And once in this realm, when it was the first time, even though I had experienced well-being and peace and openness and all this goodness, this was the first time in almost 3 years that I felt I am home. It was that feeling of like, oh, I am home, and it feels so incredibly good. And, being home is the sense of being welcome, being embraced, is warm. And although I had seen my body suspended in that water in the tank, up to this point, I didn't have the realization that I was not that. It was at this moment when I said, I am not that. And I realized myself as a being of light. And it's like I started to feel now I can, the more I understand through time, is the sense of complete, like when you start feeling interconnected. It was the feeling, some call it dissolving. There's some feeling, just the sense of totality. And then this feeling went even farther, because at the beginning, I was still having a sense of self. But it was like everything, even anything I knew just vanished. And it's when I call that I entered into the state of, that's the way I understood it later in my life, I call it nothingness. Some call it non-self, some call it emptiness, whatever is the different ways we call this. But when I say nothingness, people get scared. What do you mean nothing? But it's not, no, it's actually, imagine I give you an analogy to understand this. It's nothing you can really describe. It's nothing that the mind can even get to understand or describe it with words, because so the analogy is, imagine that there's a stadium, and in the middle of this stadium, there's a little box. And all you knew about yourself is that box and what is in that box. And now that gets open, and you realize, all I knew is this, and all I am is all this. So it's nothingness, but it's wholeness. Nothing, because you cannot describe it, you cannot give it a name, you cannot put it into context. Here, I've seen colors I've never seen here, sounds I've never heard here, movements I have never experienced here. So how could you even get to explain it? So the only thing I can say is that I was in the state of complete and absolute presence and consciousness. And when I am in this state of being, feeling the totality of everything, my mom finally arrived home. And then my mom is home, and look at another thing. We live in a big house. And if my mom would have wasted time going to the different rooms in the house, I mean, the body cannot take more. I actually, what saved my physical body was that the water was frigid cold. And that slowed down the whole process of oxygen, everything in the body. But when my mom got to the patio, my oldest sister was there, and she told my mom, I'm trying to get Ingrid. I cannot get her. People ask me, why she didn't go to the maid? Because we did not supposed to be in this patio playing in the tank. So you as a child, you don't want to just be scolded. So like, she's trying to help me out. My mom jumped in the tank. And the other incredible thing, she worked with children, and she had been trained to do CPR for children. So what are these amazing synchronicities? My mom pulled me out of the water. She did all she knew to revive me. I was in my complete state of absolute bliss. So I did not feel anything she was doing to the body. Like I said to you, at that point, I was completely detached from this reality. I didn't feel anything she was doing. But suddenly, what I felt was that I had been pushed. It's not that I wanted, nobody told me, you want to go back? No, like I had been pushed from the tallest building in the world. and there's nothing I could do to stop this. And I started to feel the sense of being vacuumed, being pulled back. And it was my sense of like, no. And then I knew I was back in the body. When imagine going from the stadium to the little box.
Yeah.
And I felt, whoop, and the sense of being cold and being sick and being, imagine the lack of the sense of expansiveness. It just now I am in the box, and I got very angry. So yeah, I was, after that, it came a period of me being pretty angry and not really wanting to be here. So that was hard.
Oh my gosh, that's and you mentioned about remembering at that young age. I know that memory is linked to any sort of heightened emotion. So if you have a day when you're, I mean, if you think about the things that we remember when we're super young, they're not like a normal day. They're like peak experiences, whether they're terrible or whether they're amazing. But it's because our emotion is so heightened in whichever state that that's linked to memory. And I remember watching this TED Talk once about memory and what is it about something that we remember and we don't. And it is that. So I can see how you would remember such a such an incredibly profound experience, both before you died and obviously through the death as well. So that makes sense, and it's unbelievable. And I quite love the fact that although there's a thread in most NDEs, the certain things that tend to happen, each one is still quite unique. So okay, that's incredible. And now that was your first one. It's crazy to think you had two more. So I'm just dying to hear about number two.
Yes. And maybe before I go number two,
Yes.
just pretty quick, is that the other thing is like, when we're talking about remembering, is like, I always say that for me, it's like the door never closed, because the more experiences kept happening between the three the near-death experiences I have had many what we call mystical spiritual experiences. And even to validate even more the first one, so people get it to that, oh, now she came back, that was a thing of the mind. I want to tell people that once I came back, not long after, I was about to be 3 years old, and not long after, now I could read, I could write, I could develop mathematical problems, I could put together complex puzzles, I could paint. And it continued. So when people ask me, how could I know all these things? I said, I don't know. I'm just remembering. So now that you mentioned the part of remembering, and I when I came back, will tell my parents, I'm not this child. I'm not this child. So I never felt like a child again. So there's, we could be here talking about all these powers, but I wanted to bring that clarity that on top of that, what happened after, and my life experience after, it was the validation that what happened was real, and that this child now had a different awareness.
Yes.
So yes, that even brought me to connect with the spirit realm and with beings of light, and when all kind of things that happen after. But my second near-death experience happened when I was 24 years old. And I think each experience brought a complete different, let's call it, message and purpose. And the second one was, there was changes I needed to make in my life, and this experience completely brought me to take a different path. And at the moment, I was living in an island in the Caribbean. I became a marine scientist. I had a very successful career. At the moment, was working with the Environment Ministry of Colombia, working with a huge project in mangroves. So I could just say I was comfortable. I was there, and life was like, nah, you're taking a different path. So if this didn't happen, I may just stay in this island and not take another route. But this shook my existence again. And what happened is, I was driving a motorcycle accident, I was driving a bike that drove me to a motorcycle accident. And what happened is that I was new with bikes, and a friend asked me, can you bring me to my house up this hill? Oosh, and I was kind of pretty nervous about that because so far I've been just doing the flat areas, and I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, oh, don't be a chicken. You can do it. And you know how we sometimes let people convince us doing things. I'm like, okay. And then this was a new bike. It was a bigger bike before I just done the little ones. And then we're up the hill. Now I had to change gear. Somehow I lost balance with this, but I don't even know what happened. When it's just, I don't know. The only thing I know is that I am in the bike and suddenly I am not.
Right.
And then suddenly I am in the middle of the road standing. And I am experiencing again the state of not fear whatsoever. I just remember hearing like the noise, but from there I was like, oh, I'm home. Again, it was the sense of being at home, the light, I was surrounded by light. It was the sense of no emotion whatsoever, not any sense of disturbing emotion. Just again, this flow of peace and well-being is so hard to describe because we have to use words for emotions that don't really even have words. So this elevated state of being again is maybe the word is home. And then when I am experiencing this, people arrive to the scene of the accident and they pick me up. And when at that moment, I felt the sense of someone picking me up, and I realized why I cannot see this person. And then that's when the fear came. When I touched my face and realized my eyes are open, but I cannot see this person. So what happened, I wasn't wearing a helmet. And I hit my head really hard with the ground, and I had a head concussion and I lost my vision. So I was rushed to the hospital, and imagine the fear now of being blind. I was like, I cannot even describe that fear either. So there was a lot of trauma in all these experiences. And then in the hospital, I started to recover my vision. And the friend that was with me in the bike, really nothing happened to him. And then when I was already almost like partially being able to see, he was with me in the room, and the doctor came and he said that I lost my vision the moment I hit the ground. And I said, I don't think so. Because when I'm standing in the middle of the road, I'm surrounded completely by light. So see how different this experience is from the other one. My awareness, everything was different. At this experience, I didn't see my body. I was just already there in the light. And I said, I'm standing in the middle of the road and I'm surrounded completely by light. And then my friend said, Ingrid, it's impossible that you were surrounded by light, because where the accident happened first was at night. And second, it was pitch black. There was no lights in the road. So you could not have seen any light. And second, you never stood up. So it's when I realized, oh, I was seeing with the eyes of the soul. And I was experiencing with the inner senses. So, and the important thing about the message and about this experience was that later in life, many people have asked me if their loved ones suffer when they died in a traumatic accident like that. And then looking at my experience and the experience of many others that have had similar experiences, other NDEs, they said same thing. Even before my body hit the ground, I was already out. So the pain belongs to the body, to the nervous system. Once your consciousness is out, there's no pain. There's none of that. And is when I realized, yeah, no, don't worry, there's no pain.
Or
There
even
was,
a worry about it, right?
there was no worry, there was no pain. Many people experience different things. It depends also when on the level of attachment they have to emotions, to other things, that you may just have probably the worry, but not the physical sensation. You don't suffer that.
Yeah.
The other part will come later when you like my family, of the decision of some have the possibility come or leave, whatever it is that each one have to
Yeah.
experience further.
Yeah.
But at that moment, nothing that is related with physical pain or anything like that happens.
So this one was a little bit shorter, their experience, because you were stood up,
Yes.
you were surrounded by light, you felt amazing at home. And the next thing you knew, you were back and you couldn't see, right? And then from then onwards, you were back in your body.
Yes, yes. So this
Right.
experience was definitely shorter than in duration and everything than the other one.
Yeah.
And now later in life it came the third one. So like I said,
Yeah.
this
Tell us
brought me,
about that.
yeah.
It's also quite interesting that I don't know if you've noticed this, that people that have had NDEs, quite a few of them have had two. Three, I have, maybe I haven't had, I mean, I've met with quite a few people, but I haven't been doing this for such a long time. But it's interesting that many of them have two, which is, I wonder why. I mean, it's interesting, it's obviously our spiritual path here on earth. And as you say, each one has made you shift very much so in your physical life. But I find it interesting because if you think about the amount of people in a population that would have had NDEs, I don't know what the number is, but the chances of another person having an NDE as opposed to the same person having a second NDE, surely that's higher. But there must be a reason why people have 2 or 3 NDEs.
Yes, no, and I actually is very common in people that have had NDEs, opposite to what you're thinking, because once you have the access,
Yeah.
see, this is once a person have had an NDE, you're not living a normal human experience
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
You're already connected. You
Yeah.
know, when I said to the beings of light, when I said to people, like, it's like the door for me never closed. It's like the door for me never closed. One day the beings of light said to me, and we haven't even talked about that, said to me, Ingrid, of course the door never closed because there are no doors.
Yeah.
We are the ones that, due to conditioning, due to patterns of I don't know, ancestor behaviors, all kind of stuff, we close the doors. But a child is born pure and innocent. And the moment you even start putting the focus of attention in the color, the toy, the outer,
Yeah.
that's where you go. The moment you have these kind of experiences, your focus of attention shift, and now you have access.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing. That's why people that have had these kind of experiences get open to psychic abilities, mediumship abilities, memories, all kind of stuff. Now you have access to, let's call it the library of the universe, which in part is your own story.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. And again, like I even had access to many other things, Kundalini experiences, all kind of stuff, just because now. And I guess I'm going to tell you something really important too. In a case, having the first near-death experience as a child, and when you start talking to people that have had near deaths as children, I am friends with a couple of them that have had 3, 4, 5 near-death experiences.
Oh.
Why? Because when I asked the universe why my experience happened when I was so young, the answer was because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. The less conditioning, the more access you gain, because you're not blocked. So after that, I became a very rebellious child because I refused to be conditioned. See, so it's like I knew the truth. And he's like, oh, you're not going to come to me with this other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
makes
more you
sense.
start meeting people, you're going to realize that
Yeah.
NDEs that have had these experiences when they were children will have more.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So
This is
yeah, so tell us
fascinating.
about the third one. Okay. And I
The
have to
third
find out,
one,
read up a bit about it. I haven't heard this one. Okay.
yes. So the third one happened only a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And it was in no 2023 it happened.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remember 22, 23 now. I don't even know the dates, but it happened like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then it was in a surgery. So, but incredibly before, and it's incredible because it's like for every experience, I always say there's going to be witnesses. Like my mom, like the guy in the bike with me, like a surgery. I mean, like these things are happening.
Yes.
And then imagine after so many years, I already have had many other openings, awakenings, a process of realizing who I am. So it's like more and more presence. I have growth in presence and self-realization. And then is when this story is long, so I am not going to tell the whole thing because we will be here forever, but I got a warning before it happened.
Uh-huh.
So few nights before it started with an accident. So what happened in the third, when I got a warning couple of days ago, that the whole thing started with a car accident. So a few days before the accident, I got a warning, and the warning was it was the sense that of dread, the sense something is going to happen, something I didn't know what it was. And because I'm such an empath, I thought that I was sensing something from somebody.
Yeah.
I usually do my practices, and everything just becomes aligned and in peace, and this time it didn't. So in doing my practices, I got a message that says, and it was in complete connection with source, and the message came as, do you trust me? And I just at the moment, like I was feeling such a sense of dread when that I even was having tachycardia. I wasn't feeling well at all. And the moment I say, yes, I trust, yes, I do, everything was gone.
Yeah.
All was gone, and I am in peace. And then, okay, I meditated that whole night. Other things happened there, but 3-4 days later, after this experience, I had a car accident. And in the car accident, what had happened is that I already had been suffering from inflammation in the womb. So I was in some medication because the doctor have thought you need surgery. But I thought, oh, I think I can heal from these. And I started to just do hormone therapy to heal this thing that I was having, and this inflammation and all this. And during the car accident, this got aggravated. The seat belt was just tied too hard, my belly, my body, and whatever that was already happening in my body got very aggravated. So after the accident, I had a bleeding that lasted for like 15 days. So now I was like, no, you definitely need this surgery.
Yeah.
And then, but incredible, in the whole process, I was guided to the right doctors, to the right place. And being there at the hospital, I told the doctor, you have to monitor my blood pressure. I knew something was going to happen. And I said, you have to. And then anesthesiologists came because I was very adamant, and I said, you have to. And then, okay, they listened, and they were kind of monitoring my blood pressure pretty closely. And during the procedure, my blood pressure dropped to the ground. And I entered into hypothermia. And when all this is happening to my body, I was back in the realm of the light.
Wow.
So for me, it was like when people have all, and the more these experiences happen, the more direct the experience is. Before, sometimes some entities will tell you, I met my parents, I met this light, I made this garden, blah, it's all this stuff that you need first. No, it was like, I'm already there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when I'm already in the light, I heard the voice that said, and this is pretty cool, because until now, I never had a choice. The first near there, like I said to you, like I was pushed, and now I am.
Yeah.
The second one, I was just back in the body. The third one, this is the incredible thing. This is the first time that I was asked if I wanted to stay or I wanted to go.
Wow.
And when I am experiencing this, it's like, I hear the voice that said, you want to stay? And when I heard you want to stay, again, that sense of home, that sense of like, of course I want to stay. Of course I do.
Yeah.
But when the voice said, oh, you want to go back? At that moment, there was a pause. And it's when I had the realization of, wait a minute, is this a test? I said, if God is everything, some call it God, source, ultimate reality, the eternal Father, whatever you want to call it, is everything at the and the essence of all there is. So where is here and where is there? At that moment, I said, there is no here and there is not there. And the only thing I could answer at that moment after that, or could say at that moment, was, keep me where I can serve God the most. And to that point, and when I have had many of these kind of experiences in the Hindu tradition, is called samadhi experiences. When you're in the state of absolute connection, totality, I have had many of those experiences. And when this happens, you're in the state of non-judgment whatsoever. Everything that is happening the way it's supposed to happen. So at that moment, I'm not saying, no, my son, and they need me and my life and my husband and my family. There's none of that. If I don't come back, I know that's the course life has to take. It's that everything is all right.
Yeah.
So it would have been perfectly okay. But the moment I had that complete clarity, home is not a place, it's a state of being. Because from the other experiences, I always was looking for a place. It was the sense I want to be there. And it's the realization there is not there. There is no here. As is in heaven is on earth, and as is on earth is in heaven. Is here now. Like the message of Jesus, the message of the Christ. The kingdom of heaven is here and now. That was the experience. So I said, keep me where I can serve God the most. And at that moment, is when I started to think, my son, my husband, my family, we need an anchor to be here. So that anchor brought me back. But after that, it was when I realized, oh, I get it. It's not about dying.
Right.
It's about living.
Yeah, I love that. I really love
So
that.
now I said it's not near that experience, it's near life experience. How I use this as my treasure to grow, to expand, to know myself, to evolve.
Yeah.
So this is our opportunity. Let's live this life to the fullest, with all the challenges, with all the difficulties, with all the sorrows, with all the joys.
Yeah.
Let's live.
I love that.
That's the idea. Live our life.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's really nice. I don't have a fear of death. I do believe in all of this, and I think that I'm in a way, in a weird way, looking forward to it. I know it's going to be amazing. But as you say, it's not why is it going to be amazing? Why am I looking forward to it? It's this sense of peace and home and connection and belonging that, as you say, we can also feel right here, right now. And I do personally, I have those moments very much, in my meditation, that feeling of connectedness, which is obviously not the same because we're still here, but you do feel like so present, so incredibly present, and so grateful just to be alive, really, just to experience that moment. So, so aware of what you are experiencing. And that can be very beautiful. And I think that people that, this is in general, people that do meditate or take the time to focus a little bit on that will know that joy of just existing.
Yes, it's starting to look inward. It's starting to
Mm,
change the focus of your attention.
yes,
And
yeah, yeah.
yes.
Well, we're a little bit out of time. I love this. I love your stories. I love, what they've shown you and taught you, and what you've taught us and shared with us. It's really wonderful to hear. I also love, for those that are a bit fearful of dying, or obviously, and it's understandable, this whole anything that we don't know about, it brings a certain fear, because what if? But it's also such a nice reminder to know that in that state, you lose that fear completely, and that you know that everything is okay, whether you come back or don't come back, even if the people that stay behind suffer. It's all part of, it's all part of the experience, right?
Yes.
So it's really comforting and, wonderful to hear your story. So I know as well, Ingrid, that you, since then, or I don't know since how long, you've been working with this kind of information with people assisting. Maybe tell us just a little bit about that. What do you do now?
Yes. I do mentorings. I teach classes. I do spiritual retreats, and I do one-on-ones. And my primary purpose is to bring people to remember
Yeah.
who you are.
Mm.
And there's the sentence I love the most and I use the most is, what is in the way is the way.
Mm.
Let's every day. I teach people, I guide people to use their experience as a way to wake up.
Yeah.
Everything that is happening at this moment is the way to fuel your awareness, to be more present, to be more attentive. So I guide and teach the people to uh, remember who they are, re-encounter themselves, and get out of the chain of suffering and the chain of feeling victim. And how can you use actually the whole of your experience to grow and evolve.
Yeah, well, I love that. And we'll have links to your website as well under here. So yeah, thank you once again so much for sharing this amazing experience and for continuing to share that, and for the work that you do. It's beautiful. So thank you so much, Ingrid.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and I wish you all the luck in the world with your podcast. This is a way to connect the world.
It is. Thank you
Mm.
so much. Bye bye.